Welcome back, everyone. For those of you who are new, my name is Shelly, and today we are back with another commentary, and I am so excited for this one. Excited is probably not the best word. I, but yeah, it is kind of the best word. I'm excited because I think this is a conversation that I have been wanting to have with you guys because I really want to see, what we're all thinking because it is a very, very heated, urgent topic, and that is book bans. I know there are a lot of opinions when it comes to book bans, but I think it's just so important that we actually have the conversation and keep the conversation going as well as see what we can do in terms of like actioning whatever points that we make. So today let's get into it because we're going to be breaking down one of the biggest conversations in the book world. Because across schools, libraries, and honestly, entire cities, states, depending on where you live, books are being pulled from shelves at alarming rates as well. So it's books about a variety of themes as well. It's books about race, gender, history, identity. They're just facing bans everywhere, often under the claim that they're inappropriate or divisive. But guys, let's be real. Book bans aren't just about protecting kids. Like it's just not true when you look into the details. It is about control. And it's really about the people who are directing the book bans. It's about them being able to control who gets to tell stories, whose voices gets heard, and whose perspective gets erased. So today we're asking, at least I'm asking you, and I want you to ask yourself, why are book bans increasing? Who decides what gets banned? And what does this mean for freedom of expression and the future of literature? And I think that's going to be a really, really interesting discussion among this. So, let's get into it. First and foremost, book bans are not new. Book bans are not new, okay? Like, throughout history, governments and institutions have banned books that challenge power. And looking into this topic, I was like really, really interested in seeing, the history of book bans. And I saw that, Galileo's writings in the 1600s got banned. And I was just like, oh, wow. It went further back than even I expected, which was interesting to see. And obviously we know that George Orwell's 1984, it shook the tables up to the point that during Cold War America, it was facing book bans. Like, come on, it's not new. And if you've read 1984, then you're not surprised either, okay? But what we're seeing today, it's it's different. It's different. Like if you've been following book bans or you've been seeing news about book bans today, you're kind of just like, this is following a different layout, a different pattern, in a sense. For example, in 2023 alone, over 4,000 books were challenged or banned in the United States. Literally the highest number ever recorded. And the thing is, the majority of the banned books, they deal with themes of racial history and social justice. Obviously, we're not surprised. And in looking into this, I saw that there were three states, Florida, Texas, and Missouri, that led the United States in book bans, and they often enforce nationwide restrictions. But the thing is, here's the kicker. A lot of the bans weren't even coming from people who read the books. And I think that that was wild. Like, I remember when a lot of the book bans were happening, and obviously you had, because I was on Book Talk more frequently back then, I saw a lot of people speaking about the book bans. And as someone who's not in America, obviously I had to get my news from them. I needed to see what was going on from their perspective. And I was seeing everyone speak about the books. And obviously when they were going to rallies, and then you had people contesting it, and they were actually fighting for it, and then you would be hearing the people who were obviously speaking about banning the books, and then they would admit that they hadn't read the book, and then you're just there like, wait, how can you demand the banning of a book when you don't know the content of the book? On what basis are you banning it? Is it the cover? Like, should we change the cover? Because we can change a cover if that's the case. A lot of bans are happening because a single complaint is enough to get a book pulled. And I think that's so interesting. Like, A single complaint. If a single complaint can get things pulled, like, would we have anything left? Like, even on Book Talk, if a single complaint was enough to get people pulled, like, there wouldn't even be accounts on that app. I'm so sorry. Everyone gets complaints because someone's being a hater at least once in a month, I would say. Once in a year, if we're going to be generous, okay? But if one complaint is all that it takes for a book, a book to get banned, guys, what the heck does this mean? Especially for the future, But I still couldn't wrap my head around the fact that that's all it took to get a book banned. Because if we're thinking about it logically, it means that a vocal minority is deciding what everyone else gets to read. And that's so, so dangerous. And obviously, it brings into the conversation, are we being vocal enough? But the thing is, you will be vocal enough a lot of the time, and then it still won't reverse anything, because a vocal minority can get a book pulled, but to get a book reinstated, that's a different story. You need a majority there, but it was only a minority that took it out in the first place. Honestly, guys, when reading and looking into book bans, and like I said, like, I haven't even done, like, there's so much to look into, so I can probably be researching for a year and still not have enough to say, or still not have enough information. But from what I was looking into, guys, let's just have the start of a discussion, the start of a conversation today. So going forward, let's actually, like, talk about who's actually, like, pushing the bans, because you get a report, someone complains, this book needs to be banned, and then who actually pushes a ban, who actually decides that it gets banned. Obviously, the politicians, first and foremost. Many book bans are state driven in America. I haven't seen too many book bans here in the UK, so it's not too bad. But we're seeing a lot of bans in America, and a lot of them are being, state driven. And honestly, it seems like it's part of a larger culture war that's targeting controversial topics like race and social justice. And these bans, they often come from legislators, not educators. And I think that's really, really important to note. If educators are saying that these books are important for discussion, for helping people to have critical analysis of certain topics, why are you banning them? Why are you banning them when the people who are actually teaching, who have actually studied these topics, are telling you that these books are not a problem, they're actually good, they're actually helpful? But no, no, no. We're listening to legislators who have these biases and who push their biases into the legislations that they push out. And it's not just politicians. You have parent groups and activists. Now, this is really, really interesting, because obviously when it comes to activists, you have activists on both sides, okay? So it's really just a push and pull. But like I said, it should be even. If a minority gets to pull it, a minority should get to push it back. But it doesn't work like that, okay? And obviously parent groups, because like I said earlier, a lot of the time with book bans, it's under the guise of we're protecting the children. And sometimes it might be that a parent might actually see something that's concerning that they don't want their kid to be exposed to. But what they're concerned about is where the question is, like, if you're concerned about your child reading a book where you have interracial marriage, then truly, what's concerning about that? That speaks more about your values, and your values are questionable in that sense. There are quite a lot of organizations that claim to advocate for parental rights, but often they demand books be banned based on political beliefs, and that's just not okay. Okay, for a country which prides itself on free speech, it seems like a lot of free speech is being violated here. That's just me. But if I don't live in the country, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, which is why I'm saying let's get the conversation going. For those of you who do live in America, who do have more insight, because this is your country, these are your laws, maybe you can tell me what I'm missing. But from my vantage point, it's not looking cute, okay? And it's not just activists and parents as well. It's also school boards and administrators. And this is where it's a kicker because obviously this is the school that your kid is going to. And schools are meant to be a safe space, obviously, and a safe space for learning, for children to be able to expose themselves to several things and to learn. And, you know, it's very, very, this is another topic that's nuanced because school boards are meant to safeguard the school for the kids. So you can't have kids exposed to, certain things. I understand that. But once again, what things are you not exposing them to and why? What is the reason behind why you don't want them exposed to that? That's the question that should be asked, okay? Because under pressure, a lot of school districts, they preemptively pull books to avoid backlash. And I kind of get it. They're just like, listen, we don't want any trouble. We already don't have funding. Please stop causing mayhem. I can understand where school boards and school administrators would want to have like a preemptive strike against backlash. But then you have to think about the effect that that's having, especially with what you're pulling. You recognize that there's a certain type of book that you're pulling, and you recognize that there's a certain type of parent or organization or activist that's asking you to pull this book, and you have to recognize that some things ain't right. Some things ain't right. And a lot of times they preemptively pull some books, even if there's no formal complaint, because they're trying to, preemptively avoid backlash. And while I can understand not wanting to cause trouble or stir the pot, to have a bit of sanity, at this point, you're sacrificing the kids, their well-being, even their education, because books are a way for kids to learn so many different skills or just so many, have different or learn different experiences of different people. Books help with that, and you're putting kids at a disadvantage simply to make your life easier. And if that's what you're going to do, then I don't think you should be in the school board. I don't think you should be an educator. I feel like a lot of people nowadays, we just know that it's going to be tough. And I think if you go into education, it's going to be tough. You know that you're going to struggle. Like we know, like we've known for years. Like I'm 20 something, but I've known since like I was a child, since I was a young child, that teachers are underappreciated in the same way that medical professionals are underappreciated. I remember having a conversation like when I was like in high school, and I was having a conversation with my dad, and then we were talking about, well, to be fair, he brought to my attention the fact that even if you're a college professor, you're not getting paid your due. You're only going to make a certain amount of money, even though you're literally raising the next generation, you're educating the next generation, you're planting information which can be used to help the next generation, but you're not being appreciated, you're not being valued. And so I think for people who go into education, you already know that you're facing an uphill battle, and you go in there kind of ready to face it. I feel like if you go in there already with the mindset that it's an uphill battle, we're not going to go far, we've already lost, let's not make any moves to our detriment. Bruh, that's such a dangerous mindset to have as an educator. Like, I know that, as someone who's not an educator, people might be looking at me like, you can say that from outside of the room, but for us who are in there, we're in here deep and we're suffering. And so I know that I'm saying it from outside the room, so I should probably like step back a bit. But, I just think, maybe a bit more pushback, a bit more fight back, a bit more fight from the education side of things would be so, so beneficial. But I do understand why, educators won't do it. It's just really, really sad. But with the preemptive pulls from schools, even when there are no formal complaints, it can get really, really dangerous because banning books isn't just removing them from schools. It's literally controlling narratives. You're not just, oh, we're not going to have this in our library. It's controlling narratives, okay? So, in my research, I saw that there was a Florida school that pulled The Hate You Give, and they pulled it for the reason that it promoted anti-police sentiment. And I thought that was interesting. I was just like, okay. And I saw that there was another another book that was moved, but it was moved in the entire from it was removed from the entire state of Texas. Apparently, it was banned. It's called Mouse, um, and it was removed. Get this, because it contains nudity, And Mouse is a graphic novel about the Holocaust. hmm hmm This is I just don't understand how these could be the justifications that are presented and then are approved. Because controlling narratives by erasing history or ignoring history is so dangerous, guys. So we're going to pretend that the atrocities that occurred in the Holocaust didn't happen. No, because during the Holocaust, people were stripped. Yes, so yes, they were nude. That was part of dehumanizing them and torturing them. You're so what you don't want people to know the truth of how horrible it was. Oh, we're going to remove the hate you give because it promotes anti-police sentiment. Or do you not want people to understand where certain sentiments come from, where they're rooted in, the dangers that some people face, the emotions that some people feel, where certain fears come from in certain communities? Do you not want to understand that? This entire honestly, when it comes to justifications that I hear for certain books being pulled, it grinds my gears, because I'm just like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Who are you trying to raise? You're trying to raise people who are ignorant, like ignorant of so many things, ignorant of history, ignorant of other people's experiences. And this is why we have people who do not have basic empathy. Like, come on. It grinds my gears so much. Because when I tell you these justifications for why these books were pulled, do the excuses sound real? If I were to tell you that, would you actually look at me and be like, there's no way that a book got banned for that? Like, you have to give me a genuine reason. Is that not what you would have asked me? Like, do they sound like genuine reasons for these books to be pulled? Or do they sound like attempts to erase uncomfortable history and perspectives? Guys, book bans, as you can tell, they just drive me up the wall. As someone obviously who loves reading, and loves what I gain from reading, the beauty in reading, how it educates me as well as entertain me. Guys, it's a lot, because book bans, they're not just about which books are removed. They're about who's getting silenced, whose perspectives are we erasing, whose history are we erasing, or as some people would do, changing, because they will now push certain books that have just washed away all of the negative parts of history, and just present the ones that are clean and acceptable and comfortable for certain individuals. And it is trash. It is very, very trash. When you have book bans, it is a great threat to freedom of expression, because they're erasing marginalized voices. Most banned books, they feature Black and Indigenous history. They feature perspectives from marginalized communities. And so if we're erasing these stories, we're erasing histories and identities. And it's disgusting. It's genuinely disgusting. And along with erasing, perspectives and histories, book bans are setting the most dangerous precedent. Once the government starts banning books, where does it stop? Like, where does it stop? It's like, we all recognize that Fahrenheit 451 was, a classic, a masterpiece. Everyone is saying, oh, it was a great cautionary tale, but we're not listening. We're not listening. Because if we now let books on race be pulled, books on social justice be pulled, what's next? What's next, honestly? Book bans will not stop at harmful ideas, because they don't stop at harmful ideas. They stop critical thinking, which is why nowadays you're looking at people and you're hearing the arguments that they make, and you're just like, where are your critical thinking skills? Are we surprised that they don't have any? It's getting to the point that I'm not surprised that so many people don't have critical thinking skills. Why would they, when they were not exposed to books that would give them that would help them develop that? They were not exposed to environments that would, encourage those discussions, open discussions that about books like that, about situations like that, things that make you uncomfortable, about perspectives that they are not familiar with. They were not exposed to that. They were not allowed to be exposed to that. And let's not forget about the fact that book bans threaten authors and educators. Teachers are losing their jobs for assigning banned books, when you have an assigned reading list or whatnot. Teachers are losing their job because why would you put this book on the curriculum? What's wrong with the book? Oh yeah, it's not good. Why is it not good? You can't give me a valid reason. It has nudity. Yes, it was speaking about the Holocaust. Yes, it has nudity. And let's not forget about the librarians either, guys. Librarians are being harassed for keeping diverse books on shelves. We have to applaud librarians who fight for those books to be on the shelves in the first place, because let's not act like that is not another side to the story, like how difficult it is to shelf diverse books. Oh, guys, it's heartbreaking. We have authors who are being disinvited from schools because their work is too controversial. Guys, what nonsense is this now? What a nonsense. Oh, guys. Freedom of expression only exists if we protect it. And when we let book bans happen, we are actively choosing censorship. And it really does scare me for the future in terms of your freedom of expression, my freedom of expression, the freedom of expression of the future generation. And then we come to the point where we're asking, what can we do about it? First and foremost, yeah, support banned books, okay? Find those banned book lists, buy them, borrow them, talk about them. They want to shut down these narratives. They want to make sure these books are never heard about. Talk about them, okay? And publishers watch everything that's happening. They're very aware, and publishers often respond by to bans by making banned books more accessible, especially if you're making noise about them. So we have to make sure that they know that there is a demand for these books. We want these books. Publish more copies, put it out there more. Give us more of them, and this might be hard for some people to do, but challenge bans where you can. Challenge bans in schools. If you're a student, a teacher, a parent, speak up, because remember, it was a vocal minority that started to get books pulled. Make sure that you're attending your school board meetings and demand transparency in book policies and fight back, push back. I'm not a parent. I'm not a parent yet. But I would like to think that if my school was moving a bit mad, I'd be loud. I'd be loud. I'd be loud. And I'm only one voice, so my voice might not carry, but I would be happy knowing that I was doing what I could to help where I could. And not just that, do be sure that you are supporting anti-censorship organizations. There are a lot of organizations like the American Library Organization in America, that they're actively fighting against book bans. They're trying to protect your right to read, which is really, really important. And I mentioned the American Library Association because the book bans that we're seeing, majority of them are in America. So I feel like, yeah, we really have to, make sure that you guys have a bit of focus. And I think what's really, really important, as someone who is on YouTube right now speaking to you about so many issues, I think it's important that I definitely tell you to use social media to amplify banned books, whether that be talking about them, bring awareness to them. Obviously, I'm starting a conversation like I am. Social media, we know that social media is powerful. It's very powerful, guys. It's amazingly powerful. We've done a lot with social media, quite a lot. And we can do more. So if book talk can make books go viral, it can also, fight the book bans, because some of these viral books might be banned in a few years. Your favorite books. So yeah, definitely we have to make sure that the books that they want to silence are the books we talk about the most when we're online. And honestly, make sure you're using your voice. You have it for a reason. So truly, at the end of the day, book bans aren't really about protecting children, not from what I've been saying. They're about controlling ideas. They're about controlling you. So truly, if if you really don't want to see that, we have to make a change, because if a book challenges your worldview, it is a good thing. It's making you think more. It's making you, expand your horizons. It's making you go beyond what you know. If you turn around and your view remains the same, that's fine. But at least it was challenged, and it made you go out and explore the ideas that were being challenged, so that you were more aware of what was out there. If a book makes you uncomfortable, that's also good. A lot of times that's the point of reading. I don't think we were meant to read 1984 and be giggling, kicking our feet on our bed. Some books are meant to make you uncomfortable, because life isn't always comfortable. And for certain people, life rarely is comfortable, And even knowing the perspective of those people is one step forward, which is good. The moment we accept book bans, we accept censorship as normal. So honestly, if there's one thing I'm going to encourage us from this video as we're ending, is to not sit quietly while people try to erase important stories, But yeah, as we're ending, as always, I want to hear what you guys think. So yes, just let me know in the comments, do you think book bans are getting worse? And do you know of any banned book that you would say like changed your life? Like, because they're banning a lot. They're banning a lot. And yeah, like in your area, definitely let me know, like, how is it in your area? Like, is it bad, or, is it still kind of like, not getting too bad yet? But yeah, let's keep the conversation going, because it is a very, very important topic. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm really, really excited to see the discussions that happen. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.